The story of AlJazeera of Umar.
With his perfect English, Anwar al-Awlaki's internet sermons preach contempt for non-believers, or kuffar.
The important lesson to learn here is never ever trust a kuffar. Do not trust them.
He was accused of conspiring with a US Army major who killed 13 people in a shooting rampage at Fort Hood in Texas in 2009. And in the same year, al-Awlaki is claimed to have offered guidance to the so-called underpants bomber, who planned to blow up an airliner over Detroit on Christmas Day. Al-Awlaki is now hiding in Yemen after being released from prison there. But borders are no barrier to the man dubbed the Osama bin Laden of the internet.
He is a motivational speaker. He is a recruiter.
It was on Barbara Badin's watch that al-Qaeda first struck in Yemen. She was American ambassador when in 2000 a suicide bomber attacked the USS Cole in Aden Harbour, killing 17 sailors. 11 years later, Anwar al-Awlaki has become the human face of al-Qaeda.
Those who are on the path of self-radicalization now know where to go, and we've turned him into a perverse kind of hero for them. So yes, I think to a certain extent he is a creature of our invention, as well as anything that he could have ever dreamed to be on his own.
To get a sense of the evolution of this firebrand and the lure and seduction of his message, I've come to the neighbourhoods around Washington, D.C., where Anwar al-Awlaki once preached a moderate brand of Islam.
We are confident that our way is sanctioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
His one-time spiritual brother, Imam Abdul Malik Jahari, claims Muslims like Anwar al-Awlaki are radicalised because they feel they have no voice.
If I talk about it on the Friday sermon, what's happening, if people hear me talk about that pain, now I'm a collaborator. This is a problem. So where do young people talk about it who feel those pains and frustrations? They go to the internet. I know some of you still not convinced that resistance is not a bad thing. The question is, how does one resist?
Anwar al-Awlaki spent his formative years preaching in these American mosques. He even publicly denounced the September 11 attacks, even though the CIA now claims he was the spiritual advisor to two of the hijackers.
The struggles of our time.
But then in 2004, he returned to Yemen, where he was arrested and interrogated for his alleged association with extremists.
And they are pursued by the Meccans who want to exterminate them.
It's then, according to Imam Jahari, that his transformation from American citizen to enemy of the state was sealed.
He claims he was tortured, and I think in that environment, he might get to a point to say, you know, you're torturing me. I'm an American citizen. You need to get your hand off of me. And they said, really? Well, let me tell you something. You're American citizens. Your government asked us to do this to you.
The United States is pouring tens of millions of dollars of military and security aid into Yemen, on the understanding that Yemen must get serious about al-Qaeda. There are frequent military clashes in and around the remote camps in the south and east of the country. But the elusive Anwar al-Awlaki remains in hiding. If there's any doubt about how al-Qaeda views the internet as a weapon of choice, you only have to look at its official online magazine. It's called Inspire. It's slick and incredibly well produced and laid out, and it's written in flawless English. There are messages from Osama bin Laden, but this is also a terrorist manual. There are stories about how to make a bomb on your mother's kitchen table, how to use your pickup truck to mow down as many people as possible. This is clearly aimed at young and impressionable Americans, British and Australians, and it's made right here in Yemen. But those who follow the call to Al-Qaeda's training camps can be badly let down, according to the man who has lost young men to the seduction of extremism.
They have a narrative that says, I listened to this internet rhetoric, I got my backpack and I went to country A and then to the third country to get on the front of the jihad. And when I got there, I found out that the mullah was having boys as child sex slaves. When I got there, I found out that they were trading opium for money so they could buy weapons, while they expected us to go out unprepared, unsupplied to meet the enemy.
For those with the path to jihad in their dreams, the holy war can still be plotted in communion with others. Samir, the Arab spy who claims to have infiltrated Al-Qaeda, told me there was no doubt about the purpose of the two camps he visited, nor the motivation for the Australians he observed. This is his account, an actor conveying exactly what he said to me.
These Australians and other students are being trained for terrorist missions. No question. Their value is in their Australian passports.
Who's running these camps? Who's in control?
Well, the money, it comes from Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries. But their leader is Anwar al-Awlaki. He is their spiritual guiding father. He is second only to Osama bin Laden. He knows that the internet is more powerful than the gun.
Al-Qaeda is many things, but it's not stupid. And it understands that if it can recruit people who don't fit profiles, who can breeze through airports, who don't raise any alarms, that again, this is a very potent weapon in their hands.
Australian intelligence agencies say there are at least 20 Australian citizens who've disappeared from the radar after going to Yemen. Does that surprise you?
Not particularly. In another place, they might end up in an urban gang. In another place, they might be part of a drug cartel. I think it's a deeper phenomena, and some of them drift into jihadism. But the question is why?
You know, I think injustice radicalizes people. The root causes are that we create an environment that makes it easy to radicalize people. And we're going to have to stop there.
A nation running out of water and running out of oil can barely look after itself, let alone fight wars from within. This frail state is not yet a failed state. But for as long as these deserts are fertile ground for Al-Qaeda, the world will care about Yemen for perhaps all the wrong reasons.
As we've been requesting, have again flared up in Yemen, with thousands of marchers demonstrating across the country. Their target, President Ali Abdullah Saleh, has said he will step down after national elections are held in 2013. But he has rejected protesters' demands that he leave office now. Such is the pace of events in the region that by our next episode, that state of affairs may have changed. That's all for this edition of People and Power. If you'd like to comment on our film or any other matter, we'd love to hear from you on aljazeera.net/English. Until next time, bye-bye.
March on Al Jazeera. In 2009, Al Jazeera visited the cities worst affected by the financial downturn. Now, 2 years later, we return as European leaders discuss the debt crisis.
In a new 8-part series, Al Jazeera looks at women's rights and maternal health, real women and their personal stories.
It's 20 years since the Arab League held its annual summit in Iraq. An Al Jazeera news special has full coverage from Baghdad.
Branded a lunatic by some and an inspirational revolutionary by others, Al Jazeera follows the controversial Norman Finkelstein.
People talk about televising the revolution. It's tweeting the revolution, Facebooking the revolution, videotaping the revolution.
A new world driven by new media.
This is a very peculiar moment in media history.
Nobody can force me in 2011 to watch whatever I don't want to watch.
Analyzing the media's role in shaping modern history. The Listening Post, at this time on Al Jazeera.
As geeks take on dictators, bloggers turn dissidents, and social networks root for social justice, governments are going cyber, spying on their citizens, erecting firewalls like iron curtains, and closing down websites. We ask, is cyber-generated change virtual or real? Empire at this time on Al Jazeera.
As protests, violence, and the call for political reform spreads across the Arab world, Al Jazeera's in-depth coverage of events on the ground brings you the news as it breaks. Ongoing coverage of the Libya uprising on Al Jazeera.
It is in the details, a look, a connection, the moments that reveal the truth. Award-winning documentaries from critically acclaimed filmmakers. Witness documentaries to open your eyes. At this time on Al Jazeera.
A popular uprising that shook the country to its core. A defiant president under siege from his people. As the protesters took charge of the streets, we look back at the events that are changing Egypt.
I will stay on the air if I can until the police come
in a special program, Al Jazeera gives you a day-by-day account from those that witnessed them firsthand. Egypt burning, at this time on Al Jazeera.
This is Al Jazeera.
Welcome to the News Hour on Al Jazeera. I'm Anand Naidu, live from our news centres in Doha and Washington, continuing coverage of the uprising in Libya and the ongoing protests across the Middle East. Muammar Gaddafi vows to stay in Libya as his supporters take to the streets just outside the capital. Anti-government forces controlling AlZaweer, 50 kilometres from Tripoli, prepare for a pro-Gaddafi counterattack.
I'm Jane Dutton in Washington. Hillary Clinton says the United States is prepared to assist Libyan opposition groups in any way necessary as two leading U.S. politicians call for American military intervention in Libya.
I'm sure you've been there over the years, but...
And fresh violence breaks out in the capital Tunis as Tunisia's interim Prime Minister Mohamed Ghannouchi resigns. And we'll walk you down the red carpet on Hollywood's biggest night of the year. Who will dominate the Oscars? Libya's leader Muammar Gaddafi has again pledged to stay in the country. In his latest interview, this time with a Serbian television station, he repeated his claims that foreigners and Al-Qaeda are to blame for the violence. And the Libyan leader still has some support just outside the capital. Gaddafi loyalists took to the streets, waving posters and chanting slogans. Outside the city of AlZaweer in western Libya, there were similar scenes. The city centre is in anti-government hands, but reports say pro-Gaddafi forces are preparing to launch a counter-offensive. Jackie Rowland reports.
The town of AlJazeera lies just 50 kilometers